Creating a chart lets you display worksheet data in a graphic format, so it's easy to spot trends and patterns. In this lesson, we'll define a chart, select data to use in a chart, and create a chart. Here's a worksheet that tracks quarterly expenses at Quest Specialty Travel. Within each country listed here on the left, the expenses per quarter vary a lot. In Japan, in quarter 3, what you'll notice is expenses are quite a bit higher than the other quarters of the year. And in India, in quarter 1, expenses are quite a bit lower than the other quarters. But it's hard to get the whole picture in your head when you're looking at a grid of numbers. So we're going to create a chart. A chart represents information in a graphic format, making it easier to see patterns, trends, and relationships in the information. We want to create a chart that illustrates how expenses in each country vary from quarter to quarter. When we're finished, we'll have a simple column chart, and for each country, we can immediately see when expenses were higher and when they were lower. Let's get started. First thing I want to do is open up the data file for this exercise, and the data file I'm going to open is EXD-1. This data file can be actually found in the data files in Blackboard. So I will open it, and I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to locate where I'm going to save my file, and I'm going to change the name of my file to be EXD-quarterly tour revenue. I'm going to click on Save. So let's create our chart. First thing we need to do to create our chart is to select the data we want to include. I'm going to select the cell range A4 to E12. So I'm going to click on A4 and I'm going to drag over to E12 to select my range. That's because I want to include the quarterly expenses as well as the quarter labels. And what I'm going to do is include the country labels. What you'll notice is when I made my selection, I did not include them. I need to go back and change my selection. I want A4 the entire way over to E12. So I don't want to include any of the totals because they would actually skew my chart. And so when you create a chart, you usually want to leave out the totals, unless that's the only thing you're charting. Now what I'm going to do is on the ribbon here at the top, I'm going to click on Insert on the ribbon, and in the Charts group here, notice there's a lot of options for charts. There are buttons for the different chart types. Each chart type displays data in a particular way. For example, if I would choose a column chart, it is great for comparing levels of data like dollar amounts in a vertical format. A line chart here is better for comparing trends over time, like perhaps the daily average temperature of a particular place. I'll click the column chart button. And when I click that button, I see all of the variations of column charts you can create. I'm going to point to a subtype, and when you point to a different subtype, you'll actually see a screen tip that helps you to make the best selection. I'll click the first option, clustered column, and the new chart is inserted right in the center of the worksheet, although we can easily move it, which we'll do later in our lesson. But before we start making any changes, let's take a moment to identify the basic elements of a chart. First, there are the axes. You have your x-axis and your y-axis. Currently, the countries are charted along the horizontal axis, which is our x-axis, and the expenses here are charted along the vertical axis, or the y-axis. The horizontal axis is often called the category axis because it usually contains the names of data groups, such as locations or months, or in this case, the tour countries. The y-axis is also called the value axis because it often contains numerical values that help you interpret the size of chart elements. Here, for example, the vertical axis plots the quarterly expenses. Knowing the difference between the different axes and what they're commonly known as will really help you as you go about editing charts and making them look a little bit better. So those things are very important to know. The area inside the vertical axes here is called the plot area. These tick marks along each axis, those marks along the left edge and the grid lines, including these lines here across the plot area, create a scale of measure for each value. And these columns are the data markers. These columns right here, those are the data markers. Each data marker represents one data point. That is one value from the selected range in the worksheet. So here, when we look at Australia, the blue, that data marker represents one value for quarter one. The maroon represents one value for quarter three. The green represents one value for quarter four. And the purple represents another value for another quarter, which would be quarter four. So the green was quarter three, I apologize. Quarter four is the purple. Each collection of related data points, like all of the quarter one expenses, is one data series. In this data series, there are 4 data series. In this chart, there are 4 data series. The legend over here on the right indicates the color of each data series. It's important to familiarize yourself with these terms so that you can take advantage of all the features that allow you to customize your chart. For example, what if, instead of comparing quarterly expenses within each country, we wanted to compare expenses among the countries within each quarter? We can easily do that by switching our rows and columns. In the data group on the Chart Tools Design tab, so up here we have our Chart Tools Design tab. Here in the data group, I have an option to switch rows and columns. So when I click on the Switch Row Column button, you'll notice I get my chart looks a little bit different. That switches the data in the columns and rows. So now the quarters are plotted along the horizontal axes, and the countries are plotted as data points. And you can notice the legend over here indicates that. This configuration is great for comparing what each country spent compared to other countries in a given quarter. But it's not as good for comparing quarters within a given country. I'm going to click on the Undo button up here on the Quick Access toolbar. So that will actually change back to the original chart that I had. Now I'm actually going to click on the Chart Tools Layout tab, which is up here, so I can actually look at my chart. The Labels group, do I see the Labels group? Sorry, missed my tab here. Click the Layout. Here the Labels group, and in the Labels group I'm going to click on the Chart Title button. Then I'm going to click Above Chart, and you'll notice it actually gives me a chart. I'm going to click here. I'm going to use Control-A on my keyboard to select the entire chart title in the text box here. And I'm actually going to type quarterly tour expenses. After I've done that, I'm going to click somewhere in the chart to deselect the title. And what you'll notice, when the chart is selected, here in your worksheet, you can actually see what was selected to create the chart. I'm going to save this. And if I want to, what I suggest is actually trying this out. So check out your textbook so that you can actually look at how can I work with charts, and then you could also learn more about creating sparklines with chart data in individual cells right in this actual workbook.